Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Metzia, page 114b. We are in the middle of the story when Rabba bar Avu meets Elijah the prophet. It might be worth it to start the story again. It's at the bottom of 114a with the words Ashkeche Rabba bar Avu Eliyahu. The Gemara relates, Rabba bar Avu, very bottom of 114a, Rabba bar Avu met Elijah standing in a graveyard of Gentiles. Rabba bar Avu said to him, "What is the halacha with regard to making arrangements for the debtor?" Elijah said to him, "A verbal analogy is derived from the usage of the term poor, mach, written in the context of a debtor, and the term poor written in the context of valuations, of arachim. With regard to valuations, it is written, but if he is too poor for your valuation, v'immachu merkecha, Leviticus 27:8. With regard to a creditor, it is written, but if your brother be poor, so Elijah said to Rabba that they're comparable because they both use the same word mach, and the way he referred to it is micha, which is interesting because micha has a gematria value of 75, which equals Kohen. And according to this story, I learned this, I think, for the first time. I might have heard it, but Elijah the prophet was a Kohen. And where's the other Kohen? Micha. So you have, this week's Parsha is Bahaloscha, and we start off with Aaron the Kohen lighting the menorah in the beginning. So there's a connection between our Daf and our Parsha, what I've been doing recently. Now we're on the top of 114b with words Minayin Arom Shelo Yitrom. Rabba bar Avu now asks Elijah another question. From where is it derived with regard to a naked person that he may not separate truma? He replied, as it is written, and he see no unseemly thing in you. V'lo yira'eh b'cha ervas davar. Deuteronomy 23:15. This verse indicates that one may not recite any words of sanctity, including the blessing upon separating truma in front of one who is naked. The Amorah proceeded to ask Elijah a different question and said to him, "Is not the master a priest? Lav Kohen Mar? Amar le Lav Kohen hu Mar? Is not the master..." In other words, Rabba bar Avu was asking Elijah the prophet, "Are you not a Kohen? What is the reason for the season? What is the reason that the master is standing in the cemetery?" Elijah said to him, "Has the master not studied the Mishnaic order of Teharot?" And before I continue, I'm making a disclaimer that what I'm reading now do not necessarily reflect my own words. I'm simply reading the text of the Talmud as it is stated in the Talmud. This project to do Daf Yomi and the Talmud is basically with the intention of bringing the information and making it public, making it known to whoever wants to know what the Talmud's really about. And it does not necessarily reflect my opinion, and many times it doesn't. Actually, the opposite. However, I am reading it as it is written here and can be referenced by anyone else who wants to read it. And it says here, and I'll probably be commenting, countering each thing, but as it says here, as it is taught in a Braita, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, the graves of Gentiles do not render one impure. As it is stated, and you, my sheep, the sheep of my pasture, are man. Ezekiel 34:31. And the way they spin it here is that they said, which teaches you is that, again, not my words, their words, the Jewish people are called man, but the Gentiles are not called man. Not my words, their words. Since the Torah states with regard to ritual impurity regarding a tent, if a man dies in a tent, Numbers 19:14, evidently impurity imparted by a tent does not apply to Gentiles. So, you could spin it in a positive way. You could say Gentiles don't give off impurity, but you could say what they're implying here is that they're a little bit lower, so they don't have, again, not my words. I didn't make this up. I don't necessarily agree with it. But I do agree with it on some extent that a Gentile here may not necessarily be referring to the same type of Gentiles today. A Gentile back then was someone who any non-Jewish person today would say this is a lowlife. A regular Gentile who goes to church every Sunday and decent, all-American, good morals, good values, would be considered a Jew in comparison to this Gentile that we're talking about here. And it's talking about someone who acts like an animal, because in those days, the Gentiles would torment the Jews and acted like animals towards them in some ways. So we can take from here that it's anyone who acts improperly, maybe would be a Gentile. But any upstanding, upright, law-abiding, good ethic, good ethical, moral, someone who just happens not to be Jewish, I'm not commenting on that, but that's just basically, I'm drawing a distinction. Rabbi Bar Avu said to him, how could I be familiar with that Braita? If I cannot be proficient in the more commonly studied 4 orders of the Mishnah, how can I be knowledgeable in all 6? Here's the connection, right here. He's making a connection between 4 and 6. Rabbi Bar Avu is telling Elijah that the reason I don't know this halacha, I find it hard to understand. Is this written in code here? Because Rabbi Bar Avu is an Amora. And Amoraim had to know all of the Mishnayos and all of the Torah. They had to know all of it to be considered an Amora. So how could Rabbi Bar Avu saying he didn't study all 6 Mishnayos? But anyway, there's more questions, but I'll just leave it at that. But if I cannot be proficient in the more commonly studied 4 orders of the Mishnah, can I be knowledgeable in all 6? Elijah said to him, why are you not learned in them all? Rabbi Bar Avu said to him, the matter of a livelihood is pressing for me, and I am therefore unable to study properly. Again, I don't see why having a hard livelihood would stop you from simply learning a few Mishnayos and Tahoros. Many poor people had learned Tahoros. You could just not learn the other ones right now. You could switch off. It just doesn't add up to me. Elijah led him and brought him into the Garden of Eden and said to him, remove your cloak, gather up and take some of these leaves lying around. Rabbi Bar Avu gathered them up and took them. When he was exiting, he heard a voice that declared, who else consumes his world to come like Rabbi Bar Avu, who takes his merit of the next world for his use in the present one? He spread out his cloak and threw away the leaves. Even so, when he brought his cloak back, he discovered that the cloak had absorbed such a good scent from those leaves that he sold it for 12,000 dinars. That's a hefty sum for a good smelling cloak. But anyway, since he knew, we were reading for the amounts of you buy a field for 12 dinars, buy a field for 10 dinars, and he's selling a cloak for 12,000 dinars. It gives you, I'm just giving you a frame of reference. I don't know how much a dinar was worth, but we're reading in this Masechta in different cases where very substantial things that were sold for, someone sold a field or a house for 20 dinars or whatever, 10 dinars, something like that. And this cloak is 12,000 dinars. Wow. Just because it smells good. But again, maybe we're dealing with the world, Gan Eden, so who knows, But still, it's still something of a question. But since he knew that this was taken from his portion in the world to come, okay, so why did Elijah even ask him then? I mean, why did Elijah tell him to come up with me here? And why did Elijah tell him to take some leaves? Only if he's not going to, he's going to be called on it afterwards. Things are not adding up with this story. But anyway, he did not want to benefit from himself. He therefore divided the sum among his sons-in-law. Okay. So he still kind of used it. He helped them out. And the whole thing doesn't make sense. Because if he was not complaining, but if he was telling Elijah, I'm having trouble because I have financial trouble, so presumably Elijah's giving him something to help him out with that, right? Anyway, Tanurabanan, the sages taught with regard to a verse, and that's where the story ends. There's no explanation afterwards. Wow. Anyway, the sages taught with regard to the verse, if he be a poor man, you shall not sleep with his collateral. Deuteronomy 24:12. But if he's wealthy, one may lie down. The Gemara asks, what is the Tana saying? Rav Sheshet said that this is what he's saying. And if he be a poor man, you shall not sleep while his collateral is with you. Rather, you must restore to him before the sun sets. But if he is a wealthy man, you may lie down while his collateral is with you. Tanu Rabbanan. The sages taught, one who lends money to another is not permitted to take collateral from him. Boy, what's going on here? And who's calling me? You're shooting me with guns. You're shooting me with guns. You should have delicious and tremendous Shabbos. Delicious and tremendous Shabbos. Yehoshua. You should have a delicious, tremendous. Anyway, the sages taught one who lends money. Wow. The sages taught one who lends money to another is not permitted to take collateral from him, and is not obligated to return it to him, and transgresses all these labels. One who lends money is not permitted to take, and is not obligated to return it, and transgresses all these prohibitions. The meaning of the bright is unclear. The Gemara asks, what is Tana saying? This is what he's saying. One who lends money to another is not permitted to take collateral from him. And if he did take collateral from him, he is obligated to return to him. That's what he's saying. Okay. As for the clause, and he transgresses all of these labels of prohibitions, this is referring to the latter clause. In other words, the case implicit in the Braita where the creditor took collateral from the debtor and did not return it, and the Braita explained that such a person violates all the Torah prohibitions that apply to this situation. Okay? Rava said, this is what the Tana is saying. One who lends money to another is not permitted to take collateral from him, and if he did take collateral from him, he is obligated to return to him. We just said. In what case is this statement said? It's referring to where he took collateral from him when it was not at the time of the loan, but rather as a means of ensuring payment. But if he took collateral from him at the time of the loan, in which case the collateral serves as a guarantee of the loan, he is not obligated to return it to him. According to this interpretation, the statement, and he transgresses all of these labels of prohibitions, is referring to the first clause of the Braita concerning the prohibition against taking collateral. Rav Shezevi taught the following Braita before Rava. With regard to the verse, and if you take as collateral of your neighbor's garment, you shall restore it to him until the sun goes down. Exodus 22:25. This is referring to a garment worn at night, and teaches that the garment is returned during the day. And with regard to the verse, you shall restore it to him the collateral when the sun goes down. Deuteronomy 24:13. This is referring to a garment worn during the day. worn during the day. Rava said to him, the statement is puzzling. As with regard to a garment, worn in a day, why do I need it at night? As for a garment worn at night, why do I need it in the day? What purpose is served by giving back the garments at such times? Rav Shazevi said to him, do you think this Braita is so corrupt that I should erase it? In other words, no longer teach it? Rava said to him, no, do not erase it, because this is what it is saying. No, don't erase it. Don't erase it. This is what it's saying. With regards to the verse, you shall restore to him until when the sun goes down. This is referring to a garment worn during the day, which may be taken as collateral by night, but must be returned to the debtor for the day. With regard to the verse, you shall restore to him the collateral when the sun goes down. This is referring to a garment worn at night, which may be taken as collateral by day. Rabbi Yochanan said, if he took collateral from him, returned it, and then the debtor died, the creditor may take the collateral from the debtor's children, and is under no obligation to leave with them. The Gemara raises an objection to this from a Braita. Rabbi Meir said, but since one takes collateral, why does he return it? The Gemara expresses surprise at this question. Why does he return it? The merciful one states to return it. Rather, the question is as follows. Since he must return it, to be continued,